So good morning, everybody. Thank you for spending an hour with me this morning to learn a bit about how to simplify ITIL processes using System Center Service Manager and Cireson solutions. So I recognize that everyone is very busy, so I'm doubly appreciative of your time. My name is Davis Mathaif, just for introductions for those of you who don't know me, and I'm a solutions architect with Cireson. So I work in the EMEA region. I'm based out of London, so hopefully good time zones for everyone on this webinar here. My email address is on the screen, so if at any time in the future you do want to get in touch with me about any questions on this webinar or anything to do with Cireson, please do feel free to reach out. With regards to this webinar, just a couple of housekeeping items to mention. Hopefully you can all see my screen and you can all hear me clearly. This is a non-interactive webinar, so if you do have any questions, there is a questions box within the GoToWebinar utility on your screens. Please do post them into there, and I'll track them at the end, just because I don't have anyone else to monitor the questions for me during the webinar, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end to address some of those questions where I can. If I can't answer any questions immediately or we run out of time, I'll try and follow up with you afterwards individually. Finally, I'm also recording this webinar, and it should be available on our Team Cireson Vimeo site today or maybe tomorrow, for you to be able to review later down the line if that's of interest. So, what do I want to cover today? Hopefully all of you have heard of Cireson, and I'm expecting all of you have because you're on this webinar. But I just want to recap firstly about who we are, where we've come from. Then what I want to do is set the scene and talk about what is ITIL, and more importantly, what's in it for us. And then a key challenge that a lot of customers have is where to start. So that's what I want to talk about for a bit as well. So where do we start with ITIL? Some of our recommendations around that. And then what I want to talk to and also show you is where and how System Center fits in and how it can benefit you with regards to adopting ITIL. And similarly with Cireson, how do we as an organization enable better ITIL practices through adoption of our technologies? And then we want to talk about some next steps. So how far do I need to go with all this ITIL stuff? And then finally, like I mentioned, we should have some time at the end, at least 10 minutes or so for Q&A. So let's look into who is Cireson. So we began in 2012 as a consulting company. As experts in all things System Center. So we identified quite a few gaps in service managers' usability, particularly while we worked with clients, and we built a few free applications that many folks found very useful and had a lot of value out of. So pretty soon we turned into a fully fledged software company, bringing more and more apps to help maximize what you can get out of System Center. So like I mentioned, we initially focused very much around service management. So we had applications that sat within the Service Manager console, then applications that extended Service Manager into the asset management space because we realized Service Manager has a fantastic CMDB. And now what we've also done is expand further into the System Center space with Configuration Manager. So we've released over the last 2 years a few free applications for Configuration Manager. And right now, hopefully all of you have heard, we have our latest solution, a web portal for Configuration Manager to enable you to get the most out of the rich data that you have in SCSM. So with all of the software development, we haven't stayed away from our consultancy practice. So we still have a team of consultants that deliver services to our end users. In EMEA, that's very much to supplement and enable our partners to deliver greater services within the Cireson solutions. But we have logged over 43,000 consulting hours, as you can see from the screen. Now we have customers in over 60 countries, over 1,200 trading customers who've worked with us in the past and currently. And also, one of the things that we're really proud of is the fact that we have a very high retention rate with our customers. So that's something that we're very proud of. And also things that we're proud of is the recognition that we've had in the industry over the last year or so. So things like Inc. 500 have recognized us as one of the fastest growing companies in the US. And if there's any of these accolades that are of interest to you, please just check our website out, and there are more details about each of these on our website. So how does Cireson fit into everything? So I'm guessing all of you will have some sort of infrastructure that you work with, whether it's on premises in your own virtualization, whether it's Hyper-V or VMware, or if it's cloud-based, whether you're hosting in Azure or in AWS. All of those infrastructure components are required to host System Center. So System Center sits on that Windows layer within your data centers. And what Cireson does is sit on top of System Center. So we expose and enable better features in System Center through the adoption of our technologies, whether it's our webifying solutions like our portal solutions or our console-based apps. So that's just a quick overview of how Cireson fits into the overall picture from an infrastructure perspective. What I want to do now is move on to the meat of the webinar, and let's start talking about what ITIL is. So those of you who are looking into ITIL maturity, you'll know about the 5 stages of maturity that ITIL describes. So things like the initial phase, repeatable, or initial maturity, repeatable, maturity defined, managed, optimized. This webinar isn't going to focus on walking through each of these in a textbook way. Firstly, because when I ask most customers of where they are on the maturity curve, they don't really know. And secondly, where someone has been through an assessment, what I found is they are typically rated. So if a consultant does some work with you to rate you against the maturity indexes, they typically rate you against some textbook criteria and not against actual business goals. And normally I find that's not very useful for customers. So what I want to do in this webinar is to focus on a more common sense approach and methods, and also to baseline and tell you why System Center and Cireson can and should enable you to adopt ITIL in a way that adds value to your business, because that's obviously what's key for all of us, adding value to the business. So firstly, what I want to do is define what is ITIL. So I said I don't want to talk about textbook stuff, but I find the textbook definition from ITIL as being the most succinct. So what I want to do is just use that definition. So the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, ITIL, is a set of detailed practices for IT service management that focus on aligning IT services with the needs of the business. So the last statement is probably the key, the last few words, aligning IT services with the needs of the business. It was designed and developed and introduced to help standardize IT practices. So the ITIL was focused purely on that. So as it evolved over the years, it has become a recognized framework of processes, procedures, tasks that are non-organization specific. So that's very key. So it's not specific to a certain type of organization or a certain type of industry. So therefore, it can be adapted as a whole or in part where it makes sense to you in your organization to make sure that you deliver IT services in the most efficient way possible. So what I want to do is talk about some benefits of using ITIL for a second. There's no point of adopting a process or a methodology if it doesn't add value, right? So there are many benefits we could talk to. I just want to bring out 3 key things. So the first one is structure. So structure is important because it allows you to standardize the way you do business and deliver IT services. And you want to minimize how much reactive stuff you're doing, and you want to be as proactive as possible. So to keep things simple, if you're proactive, you are more efficient in general. Efficiency saves time, and time obviously is money for all of us. So it is much better to onboard a new IT user or IT analyst if you can hand them a playbook of all the processes and services that you deliver so they can get up to speed as quickly as possible. So the next benefit I want to talk about is the value piece. So if your services are not delivering value to the business, then the business is wasting money on IT as a whole. And typically we all know that IT or businesses don't like to be wasting money on IT. So that's a key thing that ITIL brings, is enable you to it's a framework to enable you to deliver better value to the business, to keep our business leaders happy. And finally, one of the key tenets of IT service or ITIL is the continuous service improvement. So that's a key component of ITIL. And we'll talk more about that in the next slide. But that mindset, if ITIL can bring to your organization, or your IT organization, it can really deliver and enable some really good practices. So not too many more slides before we move on to some demos. But if you start looking into ITIL literature, you'll start to see things on IT service structures, ITIL roles, processes, and all these kinds of things. And they can be quite confusing. And truthfully, you probably have some ITIL processes going on in your organization, even if you're not aware of them. But this is what you can do to start taking it to the next level. And some of the good practices that we've seen, or simple steps that we've seen with customers that really do add value. So the first step in any good project is to strategize, right? So get to the drawing board and start measuring where you are versus where you want to be as an IT organization. So this is the information gathering phase, where you begin gathering data on the different types of issues and requests that your IT teams are fielding at the business from the business that you support on a day in and day out basis. The other key thing is how long it's taking you to resolve those issues and fulfill those requests. So those metrics are very key in terms of designing the strategy. Then you'll begin defining where it is that you want to be as an organization and measure those gaps that you have against the current state that you've just discovered. Now this can be deep dive, as deep dive as defining all the processes and steps needed to deliver the different services. But more commonly, if you are at the early stages of adopting ITIL, it's most likely going to be things like deciding on how many of your incident requests that you have currently should actually be service requests, and what services it is that you want to deliver to your users, and what services that different user roles within your business should have access to. So as you can see now from this slide, I'm going to be talking about a life cycle and a cycle of some sort. So what does a service catalog look like? That's the next step that we think you should focus on. A key outcome of a strategic phase should be the definition of what, at least an early iteration of what your service catalog should look like, and what services should be included in that catalog. So service catalog is basically a sum of all of your services that you deliver to the business, particularly in the areas of incident support and service fulfillment. So use the ticket data that you've gathered in the first phase, and then categorize those into the different services that you want to deliver to the business. Then sit down with your business leaders. So that's really important, and quantify the value of the services that you deliver to them. So the key thing is that business engagement. So if a service provides little or no value to the business, then I would argue it's not worth you spending time in defining and putting into your service catalog, even if it's something that you really like to deliver as an IT organization. So remember, IT's job is typically to maximize a company's investment on the technology. So one thing that's often overlooked in a lot of organizations that I work with is knowledge management. So to avoid reinventing the wheel every time an issue pops up or a request pops up, it is important that you keep a repository of lessons learned so that your entire team can benefit from that knowledge and be more efficient going forwards. The same thing can be said for end users. So you can start thinking of presenting knowledge articles to end users, so then you can start resolving issues before they even come to IT. So enabling the end users to help themselves, potentially something that you can look into. And it's, again, something that's overlooked very often in organizations that we work with. If you haven't done so already, the thing that we recommend you also look into is change management processes. So we all know that technology is always changing, and you don't want to have to shut down your company for long if something should go wrong in testing, and you definitely don't want to test in production environments. ITIL focuses heavily on change management, and a lot of the time, and focus on change management is the ability for you to bring best practices in delivering changes to the services that you deliver. So change management isn't a one-size-fits-all. So review all the change management literature that's potentially out there, and what we say is look at that and adopt the things that work for you as a business. So if you see literature that says change management should go through 10 levels, but for you what works is 2 or 3, adopt that. As long as it brings value to your business and enables you to manage changes most efficiently, that's the most important thing. But look at change management. That's another step that we recommend in adopting ITIL. And finally, this is where the cycle sort of comes to an end and restarts effectively. It's that continual improvement. So I mentioned in the previous slide That's a key focus of ITIL. Anything that you do or any service that you deliver to the end user organization or the business should be reviewed and re-evaluated periodically so that you can ensure that your service catalog is in line with the business requirements. So review that with the businesses. If a service is no longer providing value, plan to retire it. If a new technology or a new service can benefit the business or they're requesting it, take a market-driven approach to evaluating it for the business. And then if you get the value and a positive feedback, begin the process of incorporating it into your service catalog and into your strategy. So that process of continual improvement should ensure that the services you deliver to your IT organization, as well as to your businesses, is the most relevant and the ones that add the most value. And you don't have redundant services within your service catalog. So hopefully that 5-step process and that 5-step life cycle makes sense, and it resonates within your own businesses, and it's something that you can take forward into your own businesses to develop and deliver ITIL-based services to your organization. So what I want to do at this point in the webinar is talk about how Service Manager, and I'll have some demos at the end of this slide, how Service Manager itself can align and improve your adoption of ITIL. So Service Manager, first and foremost, from an ITIL perspective, allows you to categorize your work items, and that's very key. So right now, I hope you're not doing it, but a lot of organizations do. Everything that they log in the systems, the services system comes in as an incident ticket. So something that technically, from an ITIL definition perspective, should be something that's an issue, something that's broken, something that's not working. A lot of organizations use incidents to classify all requests. Service Manager enables you to adopt ITIL by having the ability for you to define requests in different types. So you have incidents where you have to fix an issue, something's not working, something needs resolution. Service requests, where requests are not prompted by an interruption of service, which is an incident, but it's something that an end user probably needs or wants new delivered to them. So change, release, problem management, all of these different work item types are available to us in Service Manager, and I'll show you that in the demo in a second as well. Service Manager also allows you to have a service catalog, so you can start defining your request offerings, your service offerings, bundling those together with categories and presenting those to your end users to be able to request based on their roles and what sort of services they should have access to. Service Manager also allows you to define service level management, so you can define what an SLA should be, or you can define what those are within your organization and configure those in the toolset to be able to very easily manage the service levels through a toolset which is easy for you to use. Service Manager utilizes a CMDB, so again, that's extremely useful from a management perspective, because you can start relating work items to users, to assets, to CIs, configuration items, so you can manage end-to-end that service and see what's affected when an incident is raised from an end-user perspective. So you can very quickly track end-to-end and have visibility of the service that you're delivering to the organization. So what I want to do here at this point is just switch over to my lab to show you the Service Manager console and some of the key things that Service Manager brings. So firstly, we mentioned how we can classify different types of work items. So here you can see within the work items node in the Service Manager console is the ability for me to say, view all of my incidents. I can see all of my change requests. Similarly, I can manage and view all of my service requests, and all of these are different categories and different work item types that you can publish to end users if you wanted to. But especially within IT, you can track the different types of work items. So again, you can measure the service delivered based on the type of issues that are being presented to the organization. Service Manager also lets you define your service catalog. So if I go into my library, I can have my service catalog. I can have request service offerings, which each contain various request offerings. The request offerings, and I'll show you this in the demo going forward as well. I can present various different request offerings, which are linked to templates to the end users. So what I can do is enable you to present forms that capture all the information that you need to service that request, whether it's an incident or a new service request. The offerings are linked to templates that you set up to run a whole bunch of steps. And these steps can be things like assigning to the right group when it's created, ensuring that someone approves a request, or even to run a bit of automation through Orchestrator or through PowerShell. Once you create the request offering, you can link it to a service offering, and you publish both of those, and they're available in the self-service portal, either the out-of-the-box Microsoft one or the Cireson free self-service portal as well. So then the end user can see those if they have access to them, and request services or report issues based on how you decide to present those to the end users. We also mentioned service level management, so just quickly to talk through some of that as well. So in terms of setting up service level management within Service Manager, firstly what we do is define a queue. So a queue is just a group of work items grouped together in a certain way. So in this case, in my queue, this is a queue for priority 2 incidents. So anything that is an incident which has got a priority of 2 is grouped together in this queue, and the queue can then be assigned to different roles within Service Manager. So from a service level management perspective, the next thing I do is go to my administration node and check out my service level management functionality. Within service level management, the first thing I do is then create a calendar. So from my SLA perspective, I want to measure my SLA against my working hours and working days. So I can set here the calendar, that is my working days, and also the hours that are active working hours for my business. I can also set up holiday time. So if I've got holidays, public holidays, etc., throughout the year that shouldn't be counted as part of my SLAs, I can define those in the calendar within Service Manager as well. So the next thing I can do is define metrics. So I have different metrics here, as you can see. The first thing I want to show you in this case is relating to my priority 2 incidents. If I open this one up, I want to measure the assignment time. So the difference between the creation date, in this case, and the first assigned date is what I want to measure in this metric. And then finally, what I do is take all of these things that I've defined and bring them together in an SLO, so service level objective. So in this case, again, from an assignment perspective, my priority 2 incidents are related to my priority 2 incident queue, and also it's related to my SLA calendar that I've defined earlier. So this is for my working hours, to define my working hours, like I said before, and also to my assignment time metric. So between the time difference between creation and assignment. And my target in this case, because priority 2 is quite a high priority in my lab environment, so that could be different in your case, but the target for me is to assign any priority 2 incidents within 8 hours. And I also set a warning threshold for work items that haven't been assigned with 2 hours to go in this 8-hour period, to set it as a warning within whatever means I use to present those work items to the end user or to my IT analyst. Just to show you what that looks like, if I go into my portal, so this is the Cireson portal for Service Manager, so the IT Analyst Portal. So again, this is exposing analyst functionality via a web interface. If I go into my active work list, I can very quickly see some SLA flags against some of these priority 2 incidents. So you can see on this one, if I hover over it, my resolution SLO has not been met, but my assignment has been met. And if I click on the work item itself, I can go into it and check out what's happened. So you can see the resolution SLO hasn't been met, and it's very quickly flagged for you to see and track. And again, that's very important from an ITIL perspective, to track and monitor what you're doing with your services. We also mentioned from a service manager perspective that it's a CMDB, and just to show you that again here, from a portal perspective, I'm going to search for a user. So Rob is a user I want to talk to in this case. The key aspect of any CMDB is the fact that it is a relational database, so you can relate various different items to different CIs, users, assets. In this case, showing a user, I can show all of the different attributes that I've discovered out of AD in the detail section. Rob, in my lab environment, is an analyst, so I can go to the assigned work items and see very quickly which tickets are assigned to him. So again, you can see it's a big list because he's an analyst. I can also very quickly see which requests he's raised himself. And very cool and very powerful is the ability for you then to also to see which assets are related to that user. So in this case, using Cireson Asset Management, I've got a specific asset related to that end user, in this case Rob. I can see what asset he's got related to him and which that he owns in this case. And that becomes very powerful when you start managing incidents and service requests. So I can go into an incident in this case and very easily relate an affected item, so in this case his primary device, to that incident. So I can say, in this case, because this incident is related to some hardware issues, I can see very quickly in the ticket which work item or which asset is affected. And that allows you to do further things which enable better ITIL practice, such as vendor management. So are you getting repeat issues from a certain model of hardware? You can do those kind of analysis through the system because you're tracking that relationship data through the CMDB. All of those things are enabled through using Service Manager and potentially Cireson as well to enable you to manage those ITIL processes. So again, hopefully you found that interesting and useful and makes sense. Any questions, please do post them into the questions box, like I said. Just to go back to the slides again, so we talked about how Service Manager brings better efficiencies in ITIL and how as a tool set it can enable better ITIL practices. What I want to do now is talk about what Cireson brings to the ITIL party, as it were. So we've seen that Service Manager really enables the engine room behind delivering ITIL-focused IT service management in a toolset. But you'll all know, anyone who uses Service Manager, and I think all of you do, that Service Manager can be a bit cumbersome to use. And to get it to work optimally, sometimes you have to customize it somewhat. And this is where Cireson as a software vendor comes in. So what we do is we try and fill in the key gaps in the native solution to make everyone's lives a bit easier, as well as to provide an interface via our portal solutions that really should drive adoption of your service catalog within your business. So you'll all know that you can automate and put huge amounts of intelligence into the backend system, but if no one ends up using it, we fail on the number one goal of ITIL. And in this case, it's to realize the business goal of making sure ITSM solutions are adopted to improve efficiency of delivering IT services. So if no one adopts your ITSM solution and all your request offerings, if it's not nice to use, it's not very useful to the business as a whole. So what I want to do is show you some of these things in a demo in a second. But what I want to do first is call out some of the key things that Cireson brings to the table for ITSM and ITIL. So what we first and foremost do is webify the experience of Service Manager. So Service Manager has some great qualities, but usability typically isn't something that most people call out. So what our portal offerings do is provide a great interface for both your end users and IT analysts to get the most out of the system. The solution should enable you to present your service catalog to your business users, as well as ensure that IT users can manage these requests in the most efficient way possible. And the really great thing is the end user aspects of the self-service part of the portal is free of charge. So you can download it right now and use it to enable self-service to your end users. The other thing about our portal is it's built on HTML5, and it is fully adaptive in terms of browser experience, and so it provides a really great mobile experience for all of your users, whether it's end users or IT users. We also have a solution for the number one cause of service desk tickets. So you'll all be familiar, and probably you've all experienced it in your own organizations, that the number one cause for service desk tickets is AD password resets. So we have our own solution to enable self-service password resets for end users. but also tying that back into your service management solution through creating tickets, change requests, incident requests, whatever you want to define them as, in your service management system, Service Manager, or any service management system that can take a REST API. So again, you can track if Davis Mathai or Rob Young or whoever it is within your organization is creating many service desk tickets or many past resets in a day, in a week, so you can track where those issues lie within the organization. So again, very useful from an ITIL perspective. We also have automation solutions, so our PowerShell activity app, or through integration with System Center Orchestrator, we can enable you to achieve high levels of automation of service delivery. So complex services or complex processes like employee onboarding doesn't need to be as tiresome as they used to be previously. So with that said, what I want to do is quickly swing over to my lab environment again, just to walk you through some of these scenarios. So firstly, what I'll do is log in as an end user. So again, Greg is my end user here. So from an end user perspective, you can see straight away that he has a cut down view of the portal. So he's got access to knowledge articles. He's got access to the ability to raise incidents, reports, or request services. The other thing, as I mentioned, is the fact that this portal is adaptive. So if I just go into an adaptive view, you can see based on the type of screen that you're on. So in this case, I'm simulating an iPhone 6 Plus. I have a very slimmed down view that I can scroll through to get access to the information on my portal. So I can click on the hamburger bar and get access to view my request, what I've raised myself. Click on each one individually, see the status to make sure the service desk is responding to my request and managing it. I can also go through the work item itself to see what the status is in terms of the different comments and also all the steps that the work item has to go through. So I'm going to go back into the normal desktop view so you can see more of the screen. But again, just to highlight the fact that the web experience that Cireson provides can be accessed from any device, anywhere. So again, making it as easy as possible for you to get access to the information that you present to your end users. We provide some key views for your end user as well, so to enable you to very quickly manage and view the service desk tickets that you've created through the system. So my requests is everything that I've created myself. You'll know in Service Manager it's very hard and very cumbersome to create queues and present views to different end users, especially end users. It's even hard to do that for analysts. What we allow you to do is through AD groups, define teams within the portal. So then I can say this guy Greg is part of a team of other users, and he can see their tickets and they can see his tickets by going to the team request view. So you can monitor and help each other as a team. Get the services delivered to you as a business team. We also have a concept of watchlists, which is very useful. So again, team requests is linking stuff that is AD group based. But if I, as a user, want to say specifically another user which is not part of my team has access to view my ticket or the ticket that I've raised, I can relate that to him or her using a watch list. So if I give watch list access to someone else, they can see in their watch list tickets that I've raised and manage. I mentioned providing a knowledge base to end users. Our portal allows you to do that. So any knowledge base article that you create within the system has an end user aspect as well as an analyst aspect. So I can go into something like troubleshooting startup issues. The end user can view a very nice to use knowledge base article with embedded pictures, potentially even videos if you wanted to, that they can go through and troubleshoot if they wanted to and if they had the access to. They can rate those articles, they can leave comments, which then as an analyst you can monitor and manage in the back end. So from a request perspective, one of the key things of ITIL is to make sure that you capture all the information that you need to deliver the services to the end users. So what Cireson provides on top of Service Manager is something called our advanced request offerings. So this is the ability for you to provide dynamic forms to your end users. So in this case, let's say Greg wants to request a new user or a new starter within the system. It's a common request for many people. So in this case, let's say this form, which you can't deliver natively in Service Manager, it's a 4-step process, very easy to present to the end user and for them to see and manage through the system. So let's say a new guy called Paul Reed is going to start in my business. Paul is going to, so all I need to do as a user is fill in first name, last name. Paul works in sales, and he works in London, and I can set his username up as or his email address as paular@demo.local, which is my lab, and then give him a telephone number. And here you'll see some of the dynamicness of the form. So my SLA that I've communicated to my business is 4 days to create a new user within the system. So in this case, if I select something that I need the new starter for tomorrow, let's say, immediately I have a dynamic pop-up that says the start date is less than the 4 days agreed in our SLA, so please provide a justification. And you can see that that form is required. I can't go and save this ticket without filling this form in. And as a business user, very often it's just, oops, I forgot. Sorry. And then I can move on to the next step, which is requesting the assets that he needs to do his work. So in this case, I've presented some phones, some laptops, and again, this is integration into my asset management system, again, provided by Cireson. So catalog items, I've presented catalog item names and costs and the type. So I can very quickly see I need to request a laptop. I can say that's the laptop that I need. He also needs a printer, so you can see it's dynamic again, the form, because I chose a laptop, he needs a printer. If I chose a phone, he doesn't need a printer, he needs a case maybe. So I'm going to go ahead with a printer in this case and a laptop. And then what I've also done is bundled software together to make it very easy for that end user to select the right type of user, the right software that needs to go on to that end user. So again, I'm capturing all of the information that I need at the earliest stage. So I don't have to, I shouldn't have to at least, go back to the users and say, did you actually mean this software, or did you actually mean this laptop? Because I'm not giving all these free text fields that the end user can type whatever they want into. So in this case, he's a sales user, I can select sales user, go next, any additional information, let's say it's just that randomly. And then I've also presented through a small customization, a summary page. So I can make sure I've filled in all the information that I need to gather. If I haven't captured, it actually should be London, I can go back. It actually should be, let's say, New York. I can go back, fill in the information that I want and correct it, hit save. So again, very quickly, I've gathered all of the information that I need to deliver the service that I need to deliver to the end user. And the end user can track that through the system. Or what I can do is also, so you can see it's grayed out. He can't go and edit the additional items that he's requested, but he can post comments. So he can add additional information through comments if he wanted to. He also has a very good visibility in the steps that the service request goes through. So this is the templates that I mentioned earlier. So my template has a 4-step process to deliver the service request. The first one is to create some review activities so that it's approved. Then some manual activities to deploy the hardware and software to the end user. So again, very transparent to the end user. So again, they shouldn't have to continue communicating via emails or whatever to the service desk to find updates. They can see it through the system that you provide to them in a very nice to use web interface. The next thing I want to talk about is the analyst functionality. So if I log in as an analyst, so in this case myself, you can see again, it's the same portal, it's the same interface, but through a license key, I expose additional functionality to the IT analyst. A key thing to mention is announcement capability, so I can present announcements to end users. This one's just presented to some analysts in this case, but you can present announcements to end users so that you can proactively manage incidents and the creation of incident requests by end users. So if they log in and they see that the marketing system is down because we're aware of it, Should they have to create another ticket? Probably not. So that's very, very useful from an end user perspective and communication with end users as well. The intention behind our Analyst Portal is that the analyst should not have to work in the Service Manager console, which can be cumbersome. So from an analyst perspective, I can quickly go and see my work, everything assigned to me. Again, we have a team visibility and team concept within the portal. So again, without having to define queues and those cumbersome workflows behind the scenes in Service Manager, we can set up teams in the system using support groups and AD groups within your environment, and then present those and expose those to your analysts via the teamwork view. All of those very useful to see and very useful in terms of managing tickets through a very easy to use web interface. Again, from a continuous improvement perspective, reporting is key, I would argue, and what we have within the portal is a solution called Analytics. Analytics presents a bunch of dashboards out of the box. So if I click on incident analysis, you can see some of the key bits of data pertaining to this. All of the dashboards that we provide out of the box are editable, so you can edit these. I can drag and drop them into different locations. I can edit the query behind them. What I can also do is create my own custom dashboards. So if I quickly show you that as well, if I go into my custom dashboard here, I go and edit this one. I can add more content if I want to. So I'm going to add a chart widget. So add some content here and go chart widget. I can drag and drop this into different locations. So let's say very simply, I want to keep this into this corner, drag and drop it into the corner. Done. Then I can add some content. So this is a chart widget. So the simplest way to create charts. I can use a saved search within the portal as well. I want to check on a saved search that I created with incident requests that have an affected user. And then I can see all the columns that I've created in the saved search. And I want to group by assigned user in this case. And I love my pie chart, so I'm going to select a pie chart. And I also want to have drill down capabilities, so I'm going to check this box as well. When I hit apply, very quickly, very easily, that chart's created. So I can hover over these and see the different assigned users based on service desk tickets. And even better than this, if I save this quickly, I can click on any columns or any charts or any graphs, and I can see the data underlying that. So I can go ahead and start clicking into this and start managing this work item directly from a graph or a chart. So think of all of the capabilities that you could potentially do. You can create charts using saved searches through SQL queries that you've created yourself, or reuse queries that we've provided to you. All of that is capable through the Analyst Portal and Analytics application through the web interface. Another really cool thing that we have is calendar. So even within the Service Manager console, we have custom applications that you can present calendars for. So in this case, in my calendar view, I have a calendar view of my activities or my changes or releases. So in this case, I've got a change request assigned to me to upgrade my Configuration Manager portal. And I've also got a release for Office 365, and that's going from the 5th of September or August, 5th of September even, all the way through to the 28th of September. And it's very easy to see. So as you'll know, if you've used Service Manager within the console, all you get is a list view, and it's very hard to visualize some of the stuff that's coming up. What we do is try and make that as simple as possible through exposing that data in a calendar view, like the one that you get in Outlook. And mentioning Outlook, one of the things that we do have, which is really cool, is the ability for you to use Outlook directly to manage some of that service desk information in your environment. So what I want to do is just switch over to another lab environment. So you'll know from, I guess, most of our experiences that end users tend to email people that they know within the service desk, even though you've presented a self-service portal for them. So in this case, Greg may have emailed a guy called Rob in the service desk with an issue. So he's emailed him saying, issue with my printer, can you have a look at it, sir? He should have used the service desk, the web interface, the self-service portal. But what we can still do is enable Rob, who's a service desk guy, to very quickly manage that work item. He can go in through our Outlook console app and manage that work item very quickly. So I can go in and right click, I can go to Service Manager, and I can create a new incident based on this ticket. So create an incident for, and you'll be familiar with that look and feel. So we open up the incident template, present that to you for you to fill in and create a work item off the back of just using that email. So all of the information from the email is populated, and I can fill in the key bits of information that I need. So let's go ahead and say classifications. It's not an email problem, it's a printer problem. The impact is low, urgency is medium, let's say. And you can see the priority is calculated, and the form is very similar to what you're familiar with in Service Manager. But the key thing to mention here is we are doing an API call into Service Manager and not relying on the Service Manager console being present. So this is a tool for the analyst, but they do not need the Service Manager console to run alongside Outlook for that to work. The other thing I can do very quickly is anything with a square bracket on it, as you'll be familiar with. I can open up the tickets to manage. So I can go right click, go to Service Manager, edit that work item, and it opens up that work item, and I can go ahead and classify. So this one's missing issues. So again, it's a printing issue, and this source is email, let's say. I can manage those work items directly from Outlook. And again, this is extremely powerful and one of our most popular tools for service management. And again, from an ITIL perspective, it's enabling you to provide the most efficient way for your IT analysts to deliver the IT services to your IT business, to your businesses. Again, hopefully you find that extremely useful. And again, from a communication perspective to the end user, it's very easy because you have the work items directly in Outlook. So I can go into my active work items, it loads all the tickets that are assigned to me. I can select the work item that I want to manage. I can go to send email. And because it's Outlook, I can easily go into my address book and then use that to add additional communications end users. And because it's got square brackets, as long as I copy in the service desk email address, that work item is appended to my comments and action log within Service Manager. So again, very powerful to use through the system. So that's all of the key bits within Cireson that I wanted to show you, and hopefully you can see the value add that we bring to Service Manager and service management as a whole. And again, hopefully you found all of that very interesting, and you can see how that can benefit your ITIL initiatives. So one other thing I wanted to show, just a couple more slides to finish off. We're running close to the end of the webinar. So I just wanted to touch on the Cireson portal for Configuration Manager as well. So this is our latest application. I think I mentioned it right at the beginning of the webinar. I just wanted to highlight this again. This is a web interface into Configuration Manager. So again, one of the challenges that we've seen with a lot of organizations is the Configuration Manager admin has access to the Config Manager console. And because the console is very hard to learn, very hard to use, potentially for new users, that user or that group of users, the Config Manager admins, they keep hold of the console, and the analysts, the IT service desk, don't get access to the console to do the stuff that they potentially could do with it. So what we wanted to do was, via this web interface, provide you a very quick, very easy access to Configuration Manager data that allows you to get simplified inventory data visibility, one of the key things that service desk guys need, the ability for them to quickly view user to device relationships. So you can search for a user, find the devices that they have primary device access to, manage those relationships very quickly. Things that service desk guys do very often is replicating a machine for an end user. So one machine dies, they have to replicate the software that's been deployed to one application to another. We allow you to clone and clean those devices very quickly through CMP. Obviously, it's a web browser, so it's very intuitive and easy to use, and hopefully, again, available to access from different locations very quickly. We enhance the ability for you to deploy software and OS deployments to devices through templates. So all of the activities that you do within the console, things like deploying software, deploying OSs, deploying packages or applications, all of those can be set up into templates. So then the end user or the analyst who's using it doesn't have to think, should I be selecting this option? Should the deployment be required or optional? All of those can be pre-bundled up into templates that they can select, and make sure you reduce the errors in that delivery of the service. Again, another key ITIL piece. So reducing the error-prone manual activities that you do within IT. We have our own role-based administration, which can leverage what Configuration Manager has natively. But our role-based administration is extremely simple, very few clicks to define the access rights that you want to present to different users. We have our own dashboard, as you can see on the screen here, as well as the ability for you to present reports that are native to Configuration Manager to the right users at the right time. And finally, what we also have is Commence, which is our OSD front end. So think of that scenario where you want to have a light touch OS deployment to bare metal devices. We enable through Commence the ability for you to select a template for the type of device you want to build, have a template for the naming convention. So again, you enforce really good practice in terms of naming a device. All of those things we bring to you through Commence, which is also included within the Cireson Portal for Configuration Manager. So again, if you don't use it or are interested in using it, please do get in touch and we can set up a trial, demo, whatever that is going to be useful for you guys. So finally, last question is, how much ITIL do I need? So here's a few suggestions just to get you going, maybe. Learn the basics. So there's tons of websites, tons of literature out there that provides you detailed information on ITIL. But the key things that I would take away is the ability for you to differentiate between what's an incident and a service request and a change, and make sure you employ that within your business first and foremost. So don't have a single classification. Start categorizing your requests, start categorizing your incidents to make it easier for you to report on going forward. So learn the basics. That's the first thing before you start looking at taking on much more deep dive things like supplier management, vendor management, all those kinds of things that are included in ITIL. Leave that for maybe later on. The key thing for me with ITIL is that it should be common sense. So the most common sense thing I can tell you is adopt what works for you. So not all businesses and IT departments need to take in every aspect of ITIL. And I've seen a lot of organizations try to do that and then end up getting frustrated because of the level of, in effect, bureaucracy and paperwork and hoops that people have to jump through to get services delivered. Adopt what's best for you. Make sure it's relevant for your business and adds value. And that's the key thing of ITIL as well. You don't have to use all of it. Make sure you use the bits that are relevant to you. Another key recommendation we can give you is build yourself a dev environment for your systems, including for System Center, Service Manager, or any other service management solutions that you have. Testing new processes, configurations, and technologies in production is risky, to say the least, and can come back and haunt you eventually. So spin up some VMs that you can build a test environment in, test those things, and then deploy them in production. Those VMs that you've built for tests, you can throw away afterwards if need be. And last, but certainly not least, always keep the business in mind. Keep that engagement with the business. The key tenet of ITIL is that you are providing the best value to the business for their investment in IT. So if you build your services and your processes around delivering value to the business, you will, I guess, find success. So that's everything that I wanted to cover today in my webinar, just to also highlight the community. So if you are a Cireson customer, or even if you're not, if you're just interested in System Center and other pieces, please do join into the Cireson community. We have thousands of users on there now. People post feature requests for products that they use within Cireson. We also have discussion forums for specific applications for each of the Cireson solutions, as well as each of the System Center solutions. And we have popular areas where we focus on asset management, service management, cloud, password reset, all of those things. It's a great opportunity for us to collaborate with our customers as well as partners and bringing the community together to discuss all things System Center and Cireson. If you're not on the community, again, so I would encourage you to get on there, and it would be great to see more of you guys on there if you're not already. So with that, I've come to the end of my slides and demonstrations, and we have some time for questions. If you have any, please do post them. I'll be online for the next 5 minutes or so, and we can try and go through them. Or if not, if you want to reach out to me separately, please do feel free to. Or if you have to jump off, I know everyone's got busy days, please feel free to. And just want to say thank you once again for your time today. I hope you found it useful, and hope you found at least something that you can employ within your businesses going forwards. So thank you again. So I don't see any questions coming in, so I'm going to stop the recording here, but I will stay on for a few more minutes, like I said, if you do have any questions that do pop up.